When you
Yes.
start working with a law firm, what's kind of the number one mistake that you see or you expect to see?
It is attribution and not understanding the importance of attribution. They go, oh yeah, we know how many certain case types we're getting. That doesn't necessarily help as much if I don't have a what convert set up or call rail, something along those lines.
Seth Alcozer, welcome to the Law Firm Brand Builders Podcast.
Thank you for having me, sir.
We're going to talk today about intake structure and sales for a law firm. And we were offlining a little bit about some of this just a minute ago. But before we do that, I want to give everybody your background because you've sat in a lot of seats in the legal world, which gives you some unique experiences, especially leading to what you do today, running your own kind of legal consulting company. So go ahead and give us a little bit of that background.
So I have been working in the legal industry since I was about 13. Started doing intake for my father, who's actually a personal injury attorney in Bell County, Texas. So started working for him, and there's not quite, some people say, oh, nepotism, but it's like, no, there's a little bit of pressure whenever you walk in the door and he's like, hey, we need 3 cases today. I need you to bring them in.
Did he have other intake professionals there that you were working alongside?
It was that we had paralegals. So the firm at the time, now he's kind of downsizing on straight, really social security, disability, PI and probate. But at the time they had family law, complex and general litigation, social security, disability. So it was a little bit of everything, but they were paralegals. He's like, look, I need them to work and I need you to answer the phone. That's what you're here for. So I'm at the front, sending the clients, putting them where they need to, and then I'm answering the phone. So it was,
that's fantastic.
It's a great way to learn.
And hopefully your voice was as deep as it is now back then, because
it was pretty close.
I feel like if I call a law firm and I'd hear a kid, I feel like, what's happening?
What is it? Yeah. Squeaky voice. Kind of going, man, what is this an establishment that's actually professional or not? So I started doing that for him. And then I've also I was a paralegal, I did social security disability for a few years, but took over his marketing when I was 18. And so this is in the early 10s where SEO was really taking off, right? PPC was there was some bigger budgets, people coming in and kind of overspending in the markets. And so we had to learn how to do well in a small fish in a big pond, right? In Texas, highly competitive area there. But I did that. And then I met my now wife in 2018, and she was in Austin at the time. And I was in Belton, which is an hour north. And I told her 6 weeks into dating that I was going to marry her. And she said, well, I don't even know if I like you yet. Plus, I think you need to live in Austin. So I said, you don't need to say anything else. And that was in December of 2018. I got a job at True Green Lawn Care in 2019, did that for a little bit, and then worked as a freight broker for a little bit of time during COVID, and then joined my wife's firm in 2021, was their COO for a few years, had a short stint as a VP of marketing of a nationwide PI firm. And then in November of 2024, started my company, Legal Logistics Consulting.
And what type of law firms do y'all work with?
So I practice area agnostic. But my kind of unique, I guess, portion is I only do one personal injury firm per state, one non-personal injury firm for each major metro. That originated back in 2010, when I remember Fine Law at the time was the big one, and they just kind of dominated the market. And I talked to some of their sales reps, and they would talk about the number of clients that they had in different markets. And so I just never felt like you could invest time fully in somebody if you had those kind of conflicts of interest, right? Mm-hmm. In my opinion. And so that's where that originated. And that's why I made my firm kind of unique.
Interesting. Well, and I think what also makes your firm unique is you think intake should live under marketing, not operations.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And, most firms have it the other way around. I've worked with many firms across the country over the last, 12 to 14 years, however long it's been. I was in-house for a long time at a very sophisticated operation. And I've never seen it under marketing. So make your case. Why does that reporting line matter so much to you?
Yeah. So I think it's twofold. Number one, I think understanding if you're a great marketer, you understand intake, right? I think that all of us can agree there. Now, when your intake team is really strong, that can also inform a lot of the marketing. Meaning, if you're on the phone with somebody, you're listening to them, and I call them the big 3: personal injury, criminal law, family law. If you're listening to what the clients are asking, on and listening to those calls, your intake team is going to understand how to overcome the objections. All right. They're going to understand how to sign more cases. And as the marketing professional, when you're leading the team, you're able to go, okay, what do I need to put on my website maybe to help my team maybe not have to work quite as hard on that call. Maybe they already did some research, right, on the firm. And you're also going to have a better understanding of the cases that you're retaining, right? Of, okay, we signed up all these cases, but it doesn't necessarily matter if you have to withdraw on a PI case because it's, you find that, hey, we're comparative fault state. So we're going to be 51% fault and you have to then withdraw, right? What matters is those retained cases. And I think that you're going to have a better understanding of how to retain the cases starting at the front end whenever your team goes, okay, we're talking to the most qualified leads possible. And if your qualified leads match those retained leads, let's say on a 3-month lag, then to me, you've done a great job on across the marketing funnel, your marketing, various marketing mediums to go, hey, this is what we do. This is how we do it. And I just think that as a marketing professional, you have to understand intake inside and out because that's the lifeblood of everything that you do. And legal operations, all of that's fantastic. But if you don't understand how to sell, how to market the firm from the moment you pick the phone up, then in my opinion, you're not going to win in this highly competitive age.
Yeah. So in that structure, the intake manager themselves lives in the marketing world, like under a CMO or a marketing director or something like that?
Yes. So and my thought is, as the marketing person, you have those direct reports, right? You're looking at all of the intake KPIs, right? They're in the practice area specific. And that intake person then goes to the marketing person and takes, all of the problem solving if necessary, right? What's the structure we need? Do we need to hire some additional personnel? I just think that you as the marketing person, you need to be leading the charge there. And quite frankly, I think if you need to be able to potentially get on that call and help too if you're short staffed. I remember I did that in the last firm that I was with. I got on there. We were short staffed a couple of times, people sick, and I'm willing to jump on the phone and help sign up cases. That's kind of the way that it should be.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last part, I know that when I led marketing, I did have a person or two on my team that could jump in when needed because we never know. Like sometimes people would just show up at our marketing office, right? Because they had a case and we needed people to understand how to do it, right? I know me personally, I sucked at it, right? For some reason, I could do the marketing, I could do the interpretations, I could structure everything, and I would just hate to jump into the intake calls. And part of it was because I didn't do it often enough, right? If I was doing it every day or a couple times a week, right, I'd be way more confident in the skills and ability of it. So I'm thinking about my past life and how we structured everything and what lived where. We were very connected, marketing and intake for sure. And we had all these dashboards and collaborations and all that to make sure that marketing was learning from intake and vice versa. Do you, when you coach your firms, do you coach them so that the intake conversations are informing the marketing that they're doing out there?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to know what are potential clients saying on the phone, right? If they get, if it's a referral source that sent them, what do they know? What are we known for, right? If you're a firm that does, let's say, estate planning and probate work, a lot of your referral sources are sending probate work, then you may need to lean in and go, okay, referral sources, do they understand the breadth of our offerings, right? And that you have to understand those because then it's going to inform the strategy overall, right? So I mean, you've been in this a long time. I agree that the being able to, use that a couple of times a week, but I bet that the marketing well enough because, and you understand the practice areas well enough, right? Mm-hmm. Of, okay, how do you market for a car accident case? Now, how do you also market for a dram shop case and a wrongful death? And you're learning all of those. You have to have the content that makes sense and the statute of limitations, the sources of recovery. I bet you understand it well enough where you're like, hey, I can get, if I need to, if it's what it comes down to sign up a case, then you can jump in there. And I think that marketing professionals, when they understand everything that it takes to bring in the cases, right? And understand when that case comes in, if there is a great source of recovery, the law firm is now training all of the head of the managing partners, training the associates to push through litigation. How do we need to get there, right? You're going to understand those things and you're going to be a better marketer overall.
Okay. Well, if you can walk me through kind of your ideal intake process and then the feedback loop between marketing and intake.
Yeah. So obviously you have your intake personnel taking in calls. If there's an AI structure, right, depending upon the tech for different firms, if they're high volume, I in most cases in non-PI, I think that one person, maybe two is pretty sufficient because it's just not quite the same volume, right? As you're dealing with a more high volume PI practice or mass torts as well, or employment practice. And from there, if you have the infrastructure for it, the funds to be able to invest in intake managers is great because they're typically going to be on the phone and also managing scripts, understanding what calls are coming in, what types of cases are coming in, and the marketing sources that those cases are coming in from. Intake coordinator, intake manager, I think are ideal. Or if you have somebody that can dedicate time within the firm, then maybe two intake coordinators are great, right? Again, practice areas dependent. And from there, if there's a direct report, let's say it's a managing partner in the firm, they're bringing all of those reporting on a weekly basis to the managing partner on weekly and monthly basis, assessing those KPIs and determining if there's, number one, I think you always need to be mindful of, as marketing does well, do we need to hire more people, or do we need to bring in another platform to our tech stack? I think too often people are so consumed with the numbers and looking at what's doing well, what's not doing well, and not also keeping in the back of their mind, do I need to add infrastructure in place because we are growing and doing well in marketing, right? You have to balance. That's where that kind of gets hard if you're the marketer and you're the one overseeing marketing, if that comes in, right? So overseeing those. Now, I do think that within this workflow, if you are the one overseeing intake, you need to spend, in your time at least every other day looking, if it's call reel, looking in there, seeing the calls, seeing what's being answered and unanswered, right? Helps inform. Again, going back to that initial point that I made of the infrastructure, listening to calls, understanding if you need to train your personnel a little more, right? Do you need to say, hey, we have this objection. This is how I would overcome it, right? Listening in on those in particular, making sure they're adhering to the scripts that you have in place overall and providing that feedback. Don't wait, because your conversion rate's going to suffer very quickly if you wait. And if you are also in that person overseeing the marketing and the intake, and let's say you've also run out a new campaign or whatnot, that needs to factor into those day-to-day workflows of looking at that, ensuring that you don't need to add in more resources, more time, more energy into that campaign in particular. Because if, let's say it's a PPC campaign for somebody that hasn't run it, you need to make sure that you're staying on top of those things and you're not losing spend very quickly. So those workflows need to be coming in of intake, handling everything day to day. You need to be, as the manager in there, looking at it at least every other day, in my opinion. It doesn't take a lot of time if you know what your scorecard is, what you're checking. Just the blocking and tackling, if you will, of looking at it, make sure it's in the right place. Have that weekly meeting as well. Or at minimum, looking at numbers and providing it takes 30 minutes to talk to your intake team. You have your agenda, you touch base, you're looking at KPIs. It's informative and keeps your team dialed in. Then you're doing that kind of a longer monthly meeting. And again, when you're doing that kind of both marketing, intake, having that all together, you then have a really good sense of if your campaigns are working or not, or if you need to make some tweaks there. You have really good insights. It's not going to take as much time. If anything, it's going to make you more efficient with that workflow overall. And you're going to probably get back more time on your marketing because you don't have to sit there and wonder if it's working or not.
Yeah. And having those checkpoints, I think, are always so very important. And I've seen it play out. Because I mean, the one thing on the intake side is when you're doing this job, whether you're new or seasoned, you're typically following a process that has been developed out for you. And you understand, like, everything's being recorded. And if the process is there's a stopgap every couple of days, once a week, something where someone's listening to the calls, and then they're going to have a practice session. Like, hey, we're going to listen to Barbara's calls together, right? Everybody performs a little bit better, right? When they know that, wow, my example can be pulled out, and I want to do the best that I possibly can do. And so I definitely having that leadership in place that's making sure that's happening is critical. When you start working with a law firm, what's kind of the number one thing or mistake that you see or you expect to see? It's just like common thread. I'm walking into a law firm with 10, 20, 30 people and growing. Like this, I suspect they have this one problem.
It is attribution and not understanding the importance of attribution. They go, oh yeah, we know how many certain case types we're getting. But for me, I'm going, okay, well, that doesn't necessarily help as much if I don't have a what convert set up or call rail, something along those lines. I'll use that for a high volume call or high call volume practice. Because to me, I tell them, look, if my team knows that, this is going to the marketing and intake as one. If I'm the marketer, I know that internet lead, speed to lead matters, right? If it's a PPC campaign, organic, whatever that may be, right? And so I know those things. Meta ads, I know that it's speed to lead matters. Well, then if my team also knows and they're utilizing Lawmatics, right? Let's say they've talked to the client and then they're trying to get them signed up and they happen to go back, click into Lawmatics and the call rail attribution is already there. They go, oh, okay, that makes more sense there. Why that person asking so many questions and it's a meta campaign that we have. Those types of little nuances, right? Or on call rail, if it's the whisper where you can hear it, to me, that helps your intake team go, okay, this is a Google Ads lead. I'm going to have to work a little harder here. This isn't somebody that was referred to me and went to our GBP page and because our local SEO.
Yeah. Referrals have more patience, more trust, all of that already. So
all of those things. You have to work. The more that I know as the intake person or the salesperson, the better that I can be on that call and I can anticipate objections that I need to overcome. So then I do that in my opening line of when I initially talk to the client. That is something that I see often. And when you explain it to law firms, they go, okay, that makes sense. Let's do it. What do we need to do? Especially because it's a nominal cost in the grand scheme of things.
Do you ever run into an issue with attribution where it's there, but it's not necessarily trustworthy? And,
Yes.
and I say that because, the name of the podcast, Law Firm Brand Builders, right? And the larger you build your brand, the harder attribution gets because it's no longer, there are direct attribution points, right? But the majority of it is a multitude of exposures over a long period of time. Do you run into that issue with some of the firms you work with?
Absolutely. Particularly, I'll use this example. I just said GBP because I have started to see if a firm is, let's say to your point there of the brand, they're finding their GBP page, right? They're going into maps or they're looking up where they're located. And so oftentimes, a lot of times lately, I've been seeing that GBP will increase as we're getting more brand awareness within the community, meaning a referral strategy that I cultivate with my clients of, hey, this is what we need to do. The numbers we're putting in place over a time. Right now, let's say it's in that 3 to 6 month time frame. We'll start to slowly see GBP leads go up. But what I've started to tell the intake team is, hey, look, when you hear that on the call rail whisper, or you see those form or contact come in, it's a voicemail. Make sure that you're saying to the script and asking how they heard about us, because what we're starting to see is that they say, I was so-and-so told me about you, and then I looked you up and called you. So that can also inform, that attribution can help you, right? Now, there's going to be sometimes where you just can't, like to your point, if you have a great brand and you're in the community, you're doing a lot of community involvement, you're just going to be known, and somebody that they could say something along the lines of, oh, well, I called you, I think I saw you guys at this event, or you know what, at the baseball game that you sponsored, my son's little league team or my daughter's little league team, right? That may happen, but that's where I think you have to understand your marketing campaigns as well and understanding what you're doing to where you may not even be at that point yet where your brand is not very well known. You just need to be very aware of it and very honest with yourself.
Yeah. And I've had those issues, right? Where it's, the attribution shows one thing and there's even maybe a journey associated with it where it was a multi-touch. But then, how'd you hear about us? And this completely throws it off script based off of what it looks like the journey was.
Yeah.
Right? Or
let's say TV, and you're like, oh, we haven't run TV ads in years.
Yeah. or the reason they came to us, right? Like there's certain things they might say in the context of that, looking at that path. Like, okay, well, I can't give full credit to Google or to Meta or to anywhere else, right? Because their nuanced answer told me otherwise, right? And
yes.
And so I always believe in creating some type of formulas, market by market, depending on kind of how much marketing you're doing, where you're at, TV, billboards, elsewhere, right? And that's, going to typically be more of the PI attorneys, but, I've run multi-million-dollar Social Security disability TV campaigns, right? And they were hugely successful. And we definitely saw every attribution go down when the TV budget went down or when we had a week off air. Because there's a direct response nature to it. And the one that always got me was I constantly did tests with PMAX. and it would show up. Like you turn on a PMAX test, and no matter how rigid you are about it, man, it starts showing up everywhere as credit. But then we'd ask, how'd you hear about us? We'd look at the zip code. Like the zip code didn't even align to the target area that was very tightly restricted. And then they called us because of a word of mouth referral from a friend or a former client, right? And it's like, well, how did this journey happen? And so, I think directionally, it's still it needs to be there, right? And directionally is giving you the information that you need. It's fun to get caught up on the exceptions and the ones that you're like, well, this can't be true, right?
Yeah. But I think that also informs you to where if you had, depending upon the strategy you have in place and what you're executing within the strategy, you also know that. Mm-hmm. So you're going to know, hey, we're going to have probably an uptick in some of these outliers or nuanced ones where we just don't know exactly where they came from. And we just need to be mindful of that and also understand that we have a percentage amount of leads that we go, hey, these are likely going to be, if it's 5% rate, whatever that is, you need to add that into your strategy.
Yeah.
And going back to how we started here, if you're within marketing and you're not understanding the intake team, listening in, going to those and training your team and talking to them and having those real conversations in real time, you may lose the pulse. You may lose your thumb on, okay, we're seeing the uptick in these, which means we need to go, okay, what is working in our branding? What have we been doing differently over the course of the last several months, whatever that lag is, and go, okay, maybe it's great. We're having a big uptick in qualified leads and signups. What have we been doing? And do we want to tinker to run a little test to see, to your point of when you turn Social Security disability off? It's the same thing with my father's firm. When we would change spots, right, during football season or during baseball season, and we changed certain spots and we decreased it or changed them up, went from 30-second spots to we increased 15-second. Man, it would almost be overnight, it felt like. But you have to be mindful.
We recently tweaked media buys for a couple law firms based off of our blueprint and the stair-stepping manner that it should be for Social Security disability, for personal injury, all that. And I think today I got the third notice from my VP of Ad Services that another law firm had that we took that over and implemented just a new media strategy and a slight update to their creative. Record month for the last 3 years for PI, for disability. And there was another one in there that I can't quite get. And it just shows you the importance of the media buy, right? And the difference between what that placing in sports and high value programming does versus some of the more direct response placements in daytime where people are more actionable, and that gets lost on some people, I think. And every now and then, I feel like I'm getting convinced in one way, but it's very nuanced, the situation, right? For these firms, the recommendation was very different than a firm that was in the market spending $3 million, right? It's just going to be vastly different because they're in different stages of their growth. But every time I start questioning myself, like, hey, maybe it needs to pivot, we end up with a new case study. I'm like, okay, not yet.
No.
And
interesting.
For law firms that are growing and have substantial marketing investment, I love doing these mini tests that you kind of described there, mainly because it gets hard to know what's actually giving the best inputs into that user journey. And we might be testing one thing and it's looking great, but because I'm working on the inside of it and I know the full picture of everything that's happening and I know the first party numbers and all that, I go, it might be worth me stopping that for this month or reducing it significantly, even though it's showing positive signals. Because once you grow to a certain level, there's going to be things are just going to look good because you're doing so much. And it's like, is that the thing that is making it good? Or is that something where you're just paying an extra premium for that user journey that you could have got for 20% cheaper, but it added 20% to the CAC because it was showing positive indicators? And that was always tests that I would like to run. And it gets difficult when you start running, 8-figure budgets. It gets very, very difficult, but you start looking at that holistic number, right? Because once you're at that level, you want to see the broad strokes numbers for number of cases, types of cases, CAC, dump rates, things like that. And if all those are going in the right direction, then it's like, okay, well, we made a couple more good decisions over the last quarter that are compounding. And if it starts going the wrong way, it's like we may have made a bad decision, or let me look at the environmental factors that may have affected this quarter compared to the previous one and year over year.
Well, and I think the other thing too on that is I know sometimes people when, in the ideation phase, right? And you go, okay, well, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and who's owning that, and we're going from there. Well, then I think you also have to go, okay, what small decisions did we make within that strategy to where we can go back to look at our notes, or if you keep it in a platform wherever, and you go, okay, this is also part of what we were executing on. It was that one little thing that maybe you changed within the media buy you're talking about. Okay, well, what did we change within those commercials, and what is that demographic that is actually calling, right? Of sometimes people like to have a, when they see an attorney advertising during a Thursday night football game, they may go, man,
the FOMO.
This is big time.
I can't tell you how many times I've been told I want to be an X because another lawyer is an X.
Yes.
I want to be in the football game because I'm seeing the other lawyer in the football game, but the other lawyer has been in the football game for 10 years and spends 8 times more for their full schedule. And there's actually been instances though where they get that FOMO, but then I go look at that law firm schedule. Okay, well, that's great. They're in Thursday night football and they're in Sunday night football and they're in this and they're in that. But they're not getting much frequency in the market because they're spending all their dollars on this high profile programming. Our opening is to go to this other space and create action for actionable people and not just build brand, right? Because that spot at 7 p.m. on a Thursday or 6 p.m. on a Sunday, that is brand marketing. And I always have the argument, well, I'm trying to do brand and direct response at all times, but that definitely leans 98% brand marketing because people aren't taking the action in that moment, no matter how much you say, I'm open 24/7, you can call us anytime, et cetera, et cetera. But Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, they're taking action. And so I like being there and I'm there for a lot of clients, but also like to make sure we're taking care of that blocking and tackling when it comes to the marketing, whether that is the blocking and tackling that needs to happen on TV or on Google Ads or on Meta and elsewhere. It's going to be very important that we're covering those bases and educating our law firms that we work with the reason why we're doing it like this.
Yes. Well, and I think the other thing, we've said it a couple of times, but the word growth, right? Of what if your firm is not in the growth stage for building the branding? Maybe you need to allocate more funds on networking for referral sources. And then you're going, hey, I'm spending a little bit on, I'm making a long play going into my SEO, and I need to get some cases in the door right now. So I'm going to spend a little bit on digital ads, and you find something that's working. Well, guess what? You can't do branding. You can't build that unless you have some funds. And like you said, that firm that's been outspending you, well, they may just be doing it because you kind of rest on your laurels a little bit and you go, hey, you kind of worry about, killing the golden goose. So guess what? You may have a strategic advantage in the market available to you because you're not just sitting there going, hey, we've done this for years. We've changed up the ad copy or changed up the spots that we're using. We shot completely new content, but you may have an opportunity in the market because somebody else has just been staying there going, hey, this is what we've been doing. And fear is a big driver in this market, FOMO, right? And you have to realize what part of growth that your firm is in. And I think that's another thing that oftentimes, sounds like you guys discuss that, but oftentimes agencies don't discuss that with their firms to understand their cash flow, understand their growth. Because at the end of the day, if it's me coming in doing and working with fractional CMO and agency work or wherever, if I don't come in and help the firm grow and help them make money, then I'm not going to have I'm not going to have any money coming from them either. So that's the other part that has to be discussed is what part of growth are you in, and realistically setting those expectations.
Yeah. And when something's working, continuing to double down on it. I've had conversations with numerous law firms that are like, hey, I've grown 300% over the last 3 years. It's like, oh, that's pretty phenomenal, right? Whether it's growing from 5 to 20 or from 10 to 40 or from 100 to 400, right? It's phenomenal either way. How did you do that? And then they tell me how to do that. I'm like, okay, so what do we want to do now? It's like, well, I want to start doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, have you made sure you're tapped out in the things that gave you 400% growth over the last 3 years? And typically the answer is like, no. And so I'm like, well, maybe we finesse that. Like, hey, how can we do that? Let's first examine it. How can we do it even better? And then how can we invest more funds in it so that we get more signals and understanding if it's plateauing for us and we do need to start incorporating other types of marketing, or if we can continue on this trajectory with what we're doing, let those wins snowball so that further down the line you can fund some of the other things, or you can start funding it simultaneously as opposed to just capping yourself arbitrarily. Because, if you're having success, keep having success.
Yeah. I'll use my wife's story as an example. When we got everything, we were kind of felt like we were flying the plane or we were building the plane while flying it, right? It was that feeling, which is a great feeling, right? Which is part of the reason that I'm sure you're helping law firms build. I'm out in this, like some of us get addicted to that feeling, right? That's a whole nother podcast episode. But what I found was in July of 2022 to December of 2022, I met with 101 people. Just me. We were a small group. I was taking people to coffee. There was days, Al, where I did early morning coffee, late morning coffee, early lunch, late lunch, and then afternoon coffee. I would do that once or twice a month, where it's just like I wanted to volume, and that was the easiest way for us to invest our time because referrals were just king, right?
You were meeting with like other law firms in different practice areas
other law firms, but also then meeting with financial advisors because estate planning, probate, fiduciary litigation, guardianships. I was meeting with also other financial advisors and understanding what I built out a whole demographic of what I wanted and how many numbers I needed to hit for outreach to be able to get to my people responding, to then get to number of people to meet with, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
CPAs, tax advisors, or property tax advisors, anybody that met with people that needed what we provided. So that, you know how many clients I got out of it? One. I got one client from all of that. Now, fast forward, however many years, it started to compound. Well, guess what? They've grown now from back then we were a team of 5. Now they're up to a team of 31. Now they have a beautiful office, right? We were, in Louisiana, I know it's like this too, but Texas football's king. And so we would be, we're an eighth of a mile from the University of Texas stadium. So we would do tailgates and they would just come into the office. That was the easiest thing we could do at the time. Well, now my wife had built this out with some of the marketing people they have in house, that they have what they call coffee and counsel. They'll bring in somebody from a different, let's say it's on guardianships. They'll talk about that and they talk about it from the legal side. They built that out. But to your point, we were going to be able to do that 4 years ago. We didn't have the budget. Now they have the budget. They have the people, and they continue to lean into that. Now they do some other things. Their website is doing incredibly well. PPC is going well. We're going to do some other things, but the referral where you started, it hasn't been tapped out at all. And Austin is a huge market. So lean into it, double down, don't just stop, double down into it and make it more unique. And guess what? It continues to pay off. And I think to your point, firms they feel like they're going to miss out on something like, oh, we got to change it. I tell firms all the time, look, I don't care if it was another marketing agency. If I come in fractional CMO and the agency's done well in the past and all of a sudden it's gone downhill, it's like, well, let me talk to them. Maybe we just it's a mix up in communication. And we don't want to kill the golden goose. Let's just make some changes and that we can double down and make it grow.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to do that.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of that too is if you give me capable people, like we'll have success no matter what happened in the past. Cause sometimes the issue is there wasn't the facilitator at the top making sure that the people that were capable were doing the things that need to be done in the manner that you need them done. Right.
Excellent.
Cause I worked with numerous agencies and the best ones were the ones that I came in and I saw early on, okay, they're fully capable. They have the people, they have the knowledge, they have the skills. It's just, I need to basically orient them to my systems, my expectations, my know-how based off of my experience and the nuances of this particular law firm in these markets. And then once we did that, it was, we were riding high, like things were just performing well. Yes. You had, so shifting gears a little bit, you had said a sales process within marketing, business development, and intake will make your firm better overall. Is this the referral things that we just touched on? Is that the sales process that you're referring to, or is it bigger in scope than that?
It's bigger in scope than that, but that is a lever within it, right? I think people, when they think networking, they're going to go, okay, I'm going to go to, I just use that where I met with 101 people. But guess what? I figured out, I was like, okay, I'm going to reach out to X number of people every week. Then my percentage that I'm going to have of people that respond to me, because LinkedIn can become a cesspool of AI stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Even 4 years ago, that they go, okay, we're going to now, I want to have these people that reach out. And then from there, the number of people that then potentially go into the category of, okay, follow up with, or sometimes you meet with I'll use that scenario, financial advisor. That I had a guy tell me, he's like, hey, I send all my work to this person and I will until they retire. And it's fair, right? That's kind of the candid conversations. But guess what? That's the relationship that I want, because they're loyal and they're going to be honest and transparent. So I'm like, hey, I'll follow up with you when it happens, but I appreciate it.
And it's proof in the pudding, right? It shows that those relationships are out there.
Yes.
and that you need to find that person so that in 15 years, they're still like, I'm referring to this guy until he dies.
Yes. Well, and I kept all those notes and I left them here. But I think it becomes even the next step in that process is, I'll use this. I figured out that over time, that next year, I was like, okay, who do I follow up with? How do I get even more strategic with this? What I figured out is that the people that are the advisors or attorneys, whomever, that played golf, I would try to take them. And so what I found was, this is over it's a small sample size, right? It was in the 10 to 15 people. I can't play golf very well. All right. People are going to beat me, but anybody that played well, that's just the nature, right?
It would be my nightmare. Like bringing someone to play golf. I can't play golf. I never got into it. And which is weird, because I've worked with law firms and in a law firm, a lawyer where everybody golfed, and I just never got into it.
Right. Well, I can shoot 91, but then the next day I'll shoot 110. Right. It's just going to fall. So I figured out that I could do one thing really well. I swing the golf club incredibly hard. And I can get it into the 300 range, right? 290 plus.
Okay.
What I figured out is I wanted to make myself memorable, and I wanted to do something that maybe those guys that are really good at golf, they couldn't do. So what I had found was that if I hit 3 drives of 290 to 300, somewhere in there, if I did 3 drives, it ended up where the amount of time it took me to get a client decreased by anywhere from 4 to 6 months. I was literally tracking this information because
what a fantastic metric.
Yes. And I was like, okay, there could be other variables in there, but I would take notes, right? I put in Excel, I'd take notes of every interaction I had. And I was like, okay, this is an interesting one to me. And what I found, my theory is that it's just something different that you don't see all the time, where I say that and I'm like, hey, I can outdrive you, but guess what? You're going to beat me, and that's fine. And it becomes this thing where I think people don't want to apply metrics into human interaction because they don't want to deduce people to numbers, which I agree with. And if I meet with 10 people and that could prefer me cases, and I'm also following my steps to make sure that I am following up, I have a great SOP overall with referral gifting, and I'm memorable, and I'm leaning into relationships, I'm being a people person, then you're going to know how many times it takes to meet with people to get a case. There's going to be some numbers in there. And so that sales process has to apply, right? When I take True Green Lawn Care, I would do 100 to 150 door tags before I went to the office. And then when I went to the office, I did 200 to 250 cold calls. And I knew that out of that, I was going to have a pipeline built up every single week. And it's that blocking and tackling that I think people don't want to necessarily apply to business development. And that sales process is hard, right? And I just don't think attorneys don't necessarily know what they don't know about it.
I think the one question that's on everybody's mind, though, is how much does the conversion rate drop for every yard short of 290?
It's bad. It's bad because what also happens there is I was also shooting pretty, upper 90s. And these are guys that are, shooting in the 80s. It was almost non-existent. Some of those guys didn't even ask me back to play golf. So it was almost zero.
That's my favorite marketing metric of the year so far is the proportionality of close rates to how long my drive is for.
I think I could be wrong, but that's what I went with.
Yeah, I want to, with our last few minutes, just make sure we're touching on a couple of important things here. When someone works with you from, let's say, a fractional intake sales manager aspect, In those first 30 days, what are y'all doing? What's that person doing that the firm couldn't do themselves?
So I am obsessing over the numbers, trying to find if they're any of those strengths, right? If something's going well, what are we doing well? Looking at reviewing SOPs. Do we have SOPs in place in some places that is the case? I'm sure you've seen those. And going, okay, what in the marketing strategy where do we want to go in the marketing strategy? What are the growth goals? And do we have the intake infrastructure in place to be able to accomplish those goals in that 3-month mark, the 6-month mark, and then the 12-month mark? And forecasting out, are we able to accomplish all of those goals? Because if somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I want to have 40 clients, it's a estate planning client, and I want to have 40 clients per month. And at that goal, I can get to all the revenue I want. Well, then we're looking at numbers and we're going, hey, that's actually 3 standard deviations from the mean from what you've had for the last 18 months. I don't know how we can do that. So let's take a step back here and start with how many leads, qualified leads do we need to get? And do we have the team in place to get there? And do you have the time to devote to referral relationships, all the above, right? So merging that gap that often exists between intake and marketing and determining if we can do it. If we can, how are we going to do that? And why are we going to make some of the moves that we may need to make?
Okay. That's a good answer.
And I also go out and I'm actually headed to California tomorrow to meet with a client I newly signed up. And I believe in, yes, I do this remotely. We do Zooms, but I believe in those face-to-face interactions. And I go out to clients typically once or twice a quarter to build those. And I'm a very social person. I need to get out and meet.
This month I was in Chicago, Baltimore, and Canada for different meetings. So I get it. It's just something that you can't recreate over this, Rapid fire questions to end it off. Biggest lie in law firm marketing right now?
That you have that you can't do certain XYZ because of spend.
One number every managing partner should be able to say out loud without looking it up.
Ooh. Case per sign up, or cost per case sign up.
Case sign up. All right. If a firm says they can only fix one thing this quarter, intake or media buy?
Intake.
And why?
That's the best way to improve your conversion rate.
Right.
In my opinion.
Most overrated thing agencies sell to law firms?
PPC.
And why do you say PPC?
That's the first thing they want to go to. And in my opinion, it's because SEO takes a long time and they want to get results and they don't want to acknowledge, hey, this is a long-term relationship. Let's own that. And so they go, hey, here's SEO, but we can do the PPC up here because we can get you cases and that may not be the best thing for that particular firm from a cash flow perspective.
The practice area nobody's marketing well yet.
Estate planning and probate.
Estate and probate. You feel like the competition there is just low and or at least obviously you think people aren't doing it too well. So there's a white space to just come in and do it okay and take the market.
Yeah. I think they look too much at referral relationships instead of going, hey, we need to look at all of our marketing mediums and we can really attack this and take over the marketplace if we do it right.
Right. And finally, where can people find you and who is Legal Logistics actually built for?
LegalLogisticsConsulting.com. I picked the longest possible, and it's built for law firms that are wanting to grow and not have to have an entire marketing team in-house and want to have somebody that's not going to be helping all of their competitors in the same market.
Love it. Well, Seth, thanks for joining the Law Firm Brand Builders podcast.
Thank you for having me.